one day, the CEO comes out of his office. It's kind of this urgent, step towards me. And I thought, all right, here it comes. This is my moment. And he puts his hand in his back pocket. He takes out a wallet. He hands me a $10 bill. And he says, I have a meeting that's coming here. I need you to go to Starbucks and get me a cup of coffee. And get something for yourself while you're there. College, right? And so my initial reaction was, are you out of your damn mind? Like, I worked so freaking hard. I went to school. I did all this stuff just to go get you a cup of coffee. On the inside. On the outside, I said, sure, I would love to go get you that freaking cup of coffee. And that was one of the last full-time jobs I've ever had, and that was around 8 to 10 years ago. And that is why I've become so fascinated with this concept of the employee experience, with what the future of work is going to look like.
I mean, it's not as if when you're younger, your parents come up to you and they say, hey, Jimmy, one day you're going to have a shitty job. It'll be great. Right? Like, that doesn't happen. Right? That doesn't happen when you're young. Nobody wants to work for a bad company. Nobody wants to work for organizations that don't care about them, yet somehow the majority of people in the world end up working at these types of organizations. How does that happen?
In fact, the majority of people watch the movie Office Space as if it's some kind of a documentary instead of a comedic film. We all watch that movie and say, oh, ha, ha, that's funny. Oh, God, that's my life. Right? We die a little bit on the inside every time we watch that.
Every company in the world, regardless of how small you are or how big you are, is at risk for disruption. And so what we need to think about is, are you going to disrupt, or are you going to be the one that's disrupted? I've never seen a greater opportunity than now for organizations to really start to think about and explore what the future of work is going to look like. Big data, the cloud, the Internet of Things, robots and automation, wearable devices like this smartwatch that I have on. All of these new technologies are flying into our organizations, and they're changing the way that we work and why we work and how we work.
All right, everybody stand on one leg. Okay, now put your hands up. And on the count of 3, everybody yell the word leader. 1, 2, 3. Leader! Okay, perfect, you can sit down. There's probably around 500, 600, maybe more in this room. Does the fact that I was able to get all of you to stand on one leg and yell something that I wanted you to yell in any way make me a leader? I mean, you guys all listened to what I said, right? I gave an order, everybody followed it. Am I a leader? I'm sure many of you already know the answer to that, which is, of course, no. It does not make me a leader. Now, I believe that any employee within an organization has the potential to become a leader, but all the managers within our organizations must be leaders. In fact, the very survival of our organizations, I think, depends on our ability to make sure that all of the managers within our organizations are indeed leaders. Now, one of the common things that everybody always asks is, what is the future of work? But when you ask that question, you make 2 assumptions which are incorrect. The first assumption you make is that there's one single future, and the second assumption that you make is that the future is something that happens to you instead of being something that you control and something that you shape. So when we ask, what is the future of work, what we're saying is, what is the one thing that's going to happen in the future, and what do we need to do to prepare? But what if we thought about that a little bit differently and instead said, what are the potential futures that might happen, and what do we need to do to build the future that we would like to see? What happened to the experience at work?
Why is it that we care about experience so much in our personal lives, but then when you go to work, it seems like experience is gone? And if experience is a human thing, then we can say, where is the humanity inside of our organizations? Where is what makes us human inside of our organizations? I think it's missing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest thing that organizations around the world can take from this is that they should be listening to their employees and treating their organizations more like laboratories and less like factories. Think about when your kids first started to learn how to walk, right? The kid's learning how to walk, kind of fumbling around, and the kid falls. You don't just look at the kid and say, the walking's not for you, right? You don't do that. You look at them and say, come on, get up, you can do it. Come to me, try again. Right? Kids fall down all the time. You got to get them to get back up and to try again. You will run into obstacles. You will run into all sorts of things. A lot of them you don't even know what they're going to be. The key is not to just lay there and say, we tried, it's whatever. Right? You got to get back up. See what went wrong, see what you can do, keep moving forward.
So we're thousands of miles away, in the middle of nowhere. We're biking. We stop. We get off our bikes. We look around. We're in the middle of gorgeous rice paddy fields and mountains. And I look around, and not too far away from me, there's a rice paddy farmer. And the rice paddy farmer is in his field doing his chores, and then he stops for a minute. He puts his hand into his pocket, and he takes out a smartphone. Smartphone. And I thought that was fascinating because here we are thousands of miles away from the Bay Area in the middle of nowhere, and here's a rice paddy farmer that has access to the same people, the same technology, the same information, and the same data that I do living in the Bay Area. That's what mobility is about.
Take any concept that you have at your company that has been in place for the last couple decades. It could be commuting to the office, it could be annual employee reviews, whatever it is. Take that one concept and say, do we really need that? Do employees really have to commute? Do we really need annual employee reviews? Do we have to have cubicles? Start with a basic question, take that common assumption and challenge it.
And in the middle of a TV show, as usual, there was a commercial. And the commercial came on, and it was for a prescription drug, which I won't name just in case anybody here has a relationship with it. And this commercial was playing, and they said, side effects include depression, anxiety, hair loss, and possibly death. And I couldn't help just burst out laughing when I saw this commercial on TV. But then it also made me realize there is something at play here that is not just with drugs, but with our organizations. In other words, what are the side effects of working at your organization? It's similar to taking a prescription drug. Right? It's not that dissimilar for many of these organizations. There are many organizations around the world, and I've seen them firsthand, where employees experience loss of sleep. They get in arguments with their spouses. They gain weight, bleeding from the eyes, and in some cases, death.
Even with this influx of technology, we still have to remember the people component, the human component inside of our organizations. Because while many organizations can exist without technology, no organization in the world can exist without people.
I don't think that robots and automation are taking jobs away from humans. I think humans are the ones that are taking the jobs away from robots. If you look at how our organizations have been constructed over the last 10, 50, 100, 150 plus years, you will see that they have been built on this process-centric linear concept and way of thinking. We show up at the same time, we wear the same thing, we work with the same people, we leave at the same time, we take breaks at the same time. Everything is very linear, it's process-centric. It's like putting together furniture. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Now, I don't know about you, but that to me sounds like the perfect job for a robot. It sounds like the perfect job for software. Now, unfortunately, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, we didn't have robots. We didn't have software that was actually able to do these jobs. So what did we do? We took people. We took humans, and we put those humans in those positions, in those jobs, where they were supposed to do the same thing over and over and over every single day of the week. That is a job for a robot. That is not a job for a human. So what's happening now is we actually have these robots. We actually have this software that is coming back to take the jobs that were designed for them to begin with.
Now, this is a question that I always like to ask, right? When you think about the future of work, what comes into your mind? And a lot of people say things like millennials, technology, big data, wearables, flexible work. And these are all very, very relevant themes. But the challenge is, how often do organizations actually think about how we work? I mean, we spend a lot of time thinking about technology. We spend a lot of time thinking about supply chain, about marketing, about our customers. Right? We spend a lot of time thinking about all these things. But how often do our organizations actually sit and think about how the workplace is changing? What does the future of work actually look like? And why is it starting to look like that?
But I always tell organizations, if you were to remove all the millennials from your entire company, you would still have plenty of employees that care about things such as compensation, flexible work, doing meaningful work, career path development and benefits and all those different types of things.
This is how we have built our organizations on top of these ideas that managers are slave drivers, that employees are expendable, and that work has to suck. Right? That is how we have built our organizations. So how is it that investment in employee engagement has never been higher, meanwhile the scores have never been lower? We never spent more money on institutions and surveys and tools to drive employee engagement and happiness at work, and at the same time the scores have never been lower. How does that make any sense? The big problem that we're starting to see with employee engagement organizations around the world is that it focuses on short-term solutions to a long-term problem. It doesn't change the system. So basically what we do is we take employees, we put them inside of outdated workplace practices, and we give them perks to distract them from the situation of their lives. So you work in an environment that still implements these outdated workplace practices, but you get hot yoga. You get free food. You can bring your dog to work. We have all worked for organizations at one point in our lives where we didn't like our jobs. And what happens? We switch jobs and we go work for an identical organization, same size, same industry, virtually the same location, and now all of a sudden we love our jobs. What changed? It's not the work that you're doing the same work. It's not the industry, you're in the same industry. You didn't relocate, you're still in the same city. So what is it that changed, and what is it that moves you from not liking your job to liking your job? It's the environment. It's moving from one organization that doesn't care and that doesn't invest in culture, technology, and physical space, and moving to one that does. So the environment shapes all of your experiences.
And see, ever since our organizations have been created, we've had this very fundamental assumption around why companies exist. And that assumption has worked for the past 100 years, but it's not working anymore. And that assumption is that organizations can create a place where employees need to work there. And that means that the war for talent has never been greater, because the number one asset that all of our organizations have to bring people in has always been cash. That's how we attract and retain the top talent. We pay them more. That doesn't work anymore. And so what's happening is that organizations are having to shift their mentality away from creating an environment where people need to work there to creating an organization where people want to work there. You have to create an environment where people want to be there.
Think of your organization less like a factory and more like a laboratory. Factories are linear, they're process-centric. They maintain the status quo. It's about command and control and delegation. Laboratories are the exact opposite. They test, they experiment, they use data, they get feedback. They have people that provide training and encouragement and support. It's okay if you fail, you try again. If we can think of our organizations more like labs and less like factories, we will be able to design and create beautiful things for our employees.
And if there's one thing that you can leave from today, one thing that I can stick into your minds, it is this idea of the employee experience equation. If you want to create a great employee experience, if you want to create a place where people want to show up, where they bring their best ideas, their innovations, their aspirations, their hopes, their dreams, everything with them to work, then you have to focus on this equation. Culture plus technology plus physical space equals experience. Culture, technology, physical space equals experience. When we think about the future of work, the organizations that focus on those three things are the organizations that I strongly believe are going to succeed and thrive and be able to bring in the best and the brightest people within their organizations. What kind of an experience do you want to create for the organizations that you work with, for the organizations that you are a part of, and for the people that you serve? And think about what actions you can take back today after leaving this event to create those experiences. And ask yourself, what would your organization look like if it focused on designing employee experiences? And wouldn't you want to be a part of that kind of an organization? Thank you.